Hello, this is Elio and Linda from Westeros.org, and we decided to try something new. We are going to try to discuss and review A Dance with Dragons, the much anticipated Dance with Dragons, via a video podcast instead of writing something, so we could both clearly share our views on it.
Oh, don't think you're getting out of writing something.
Okay.
But we got infected by doing the phone cast for Sky during Game of Thrones, so we're trying this.
So, 6 years in the making, some would say almost 11 years in the making. This is a book that is the result. This and A Feast for Crow's predecessor are the bastard children of the infamous 5-year gap, which, for those who do not know, George intended, at the end of A Storm of Swords, to jump ahead 5 years and pick the story up from there. Didn't quite work out.
No, he said he got a lot of characters who were just talking about, oh, so you remember when so-and-so did something, and this and that happened, and it didn't feel natural.
So it's A Feast for Crows is a book that you and I quite enjoy. Others may not feel the same. However, I guess we should kind of explain our position on that book and sort of where it fits into the hierarchy of books. Now, when James Hibbard of Entertainment Weekly gave his sort of, not quite a review, more of some discussion points about it, he ranked the books in order of his preference, and he listed Storm of Swords as first, Game of Thrones as second, and then he put Dance with Dragons as the third, followed by, I believe it was A Clash of Kings and A Feast for Crows. And I said, there's some similarity between my view and his, which is, I would put it at Game of Thrones first, and I know you share the same. We can't. It's the book that introduces this world and opened our eyes. There are
very few series where I would say that anything other than the first book is the strongest, because it just has such an advantage.
It's strange that, of course, if I think of Lord of the Rings, for me, The Return of a King is almost the strongest. Not the films, mind you, but
that may be true, because I'm not a big fan of The Hobbit part either. So.
Yeah, introduction of the hero and all that.
Yes,
big ones for us. But in any case, that's our Elendorite.
Yeah.
For those who know what that is, that's just a little in-joke.
Yeah.
In any case, it's the book that, it was in the middle for me as well. I would put Game of Thrones first, and then Storm of Swords, and then this book. And then I've always said, I can't really pick between A Clash of Kings and A Feast, because for me they are about the same.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I've heard some long-time fans, and there's people who put the second book as their favorite, whereas you consider it sort of your least favorite.
It's my least favorite, yeah.
And I've heard other fans, there are fans who put A Feast for Crows as their very favorite novel. More power to them. I mean, different structures, different books. I guess part of the thing that is appealing about the series, that there's so many stories happening.
Yes,
that you can.
I was thinking of I think I commented on that recently to someone, actually, that there are so many different stories and so many different point of views that if a certain point of view or a certain way of telling the story doesn't appeal to you, it's very likely that another one will. I mean, Tyrion is a favorite of many, and I don't particularly like Tyrion. Yeah. He can be great fun, and he has a lot of interesting things happening in his chapters, but as a person and as a character, no, I haven't warmed to him at all. With the exception for A Dance with Dragons, in fact. I like him better here than in earlier books.
Okay. And then I would say, I guess, that I put A Dance with Dragons a little nearer to A Clash of Kings and A Feast for Crows than to A Storm of Swords and A Game of Thrones. But all in all, it's a very high quality series. I have fewer problems in it than some do. I feel you probably feel the same.
Yeah.
So these are it's saying quite a lot about how good these books are. Now, one thing we should say is we read it a little bit earlier than most. We read it end of April. Yeah. Early May, when George...
As it was going off to the editor.
Yeah, he was sending pieces, and he was still doing his sweat, as he calls it, where he was boiling it down a bit and pruning it and tightening it up. But we helped with the continuity checking, so there are things that would have been errors that didn't. Now, on the other hand, it was really interesting to have the perspective on the process, because it's very intense. It's very difficult. You don't quite imagine, like, you think, oh, I caught this error, how could they miss it? Mm. But when you're combing intensely through the whole thing, it's easy to actually miss little things like that. And I know
your brain corrects for you. Yeah. When you read lots of text, it corrects for you, and you think you read the right thing when you didn't. They tell you to, when you're proofreading, print it out and read it backwards. Doing that with the story or the Dance with Dragons would take a while.
Yeah, it's a 1,000-page book. It would take a long time, and a lot of people working on it. In rereading it, the final version, I caught more errors and kind of like, how did I miss that one? But it's quite hard. But so we read it a bit earlier. We've sat on this fact for a couple of months.
Able to talk to each other, but no one else.
Yeah, we've talked a lot with one another about it, because there's a lot to discuss. So our overall view, you now know, is we're positive about it. Yeah. We have reason to be positive. I think you obviously may doubt it, but it's a book that we genuinely enjoy.
Yeah.
Almost entirely. I think there are probably sections that you weren't so happy with.
Well, there are things that are really good, but which I didn't necessarily enjoy reading. Which is one of my problems with the series as a whole, and the reason that I, would rank A Feast for Crows over A Storm of Swords. I'm not big on the moments that kick you in the gut. I'll take the melancholy sadness over Feast for Crows any day than the more harrowing parts.
Because, I mean, you have read pretty much everything, but you've kind of skipped over...
The latter half of Storm of Swords traumatized me a little bit, hearing about it, and I've had difficulty getting back to it. I mean, I know everything that happens, and, I've read bits and pieces. I read all the Dany chapters, because Dany is my absolute favorite, but it's just... Some of it is just a little too tough for me to deal with. I'm a gentle soul.
I can't remember. Did you read the Red Viper's Demise? No,
that's another one I don't think I will be reading. That and the Red Wedding, I don't think I'll be experiencing those in first person.
Then wait until the show gets to it.
I will not be watching those episodes, I'm sorry to say.
So, that is not to say that this book is not filled with some shockers, some highly anticipated moments. For me, there are 3 major moments on the level of the Red Wedding or the ending of the Battle of the Blackwater. They
very different feel, but they are major moments.
Yeah, and we can't discuss them too much because we don't want to be spoilery, but there's some amazing writing. One of the things about A Feast for Crows that happened in the course of writing is George seemed to go back a bit towards his roots as a writer.
Yeah, I think he's been drifting there. In Game of Thrones, you have this very tightly plotted book. There's a lot of characters, and George always makes the characters come alive, even when he just sort of sketches it more lightly. But if you look at something like Fever Dream, there is a richness of character and atmosphere and sort of a depth to it that in the tightness of Game of Thrones, it isn't quite there. I mean, it is very good in its character portrayal and everything, but as the series goes on and the weight of what has happened to the characters starts to settle in on him, I think he felt that he started drifting more and more towards his roots as a writer, which is very atmospheric, very character-driven, rather than very plot-driven. So now he's got all of that to deal with, which explains the size of the books.
Yeah, for example, I've always said that in Feast for Crows, The Feast for Crows contains the most beautiful bits of writing that I've seen in any of the novels, which is the captain of the guard, the melancholy he evokes, the atmosphere. It's just stunning. It's poetry. And George is a fairly disciplined writer. He doesn't often allow himself that, but in Feast for Crows he allows himself to do a bit more of it. I think.
I mean, I feel a little bit like there's, I wouldn't say an influence because I don't think there is, but it reminds me a lot of some Guy Gabriel Kay's writing in the richness of it and
evoking.
Yes, it's very evocative. Yes, and it has a almost elegant quality to some of it, and
it's because A Dance of Dragons is one of the things that's perhaps negative is the first half of it is sort of concurrent with Feast for Crows. But of course it's telling a different part of a story, except for a little overlap at the beginning where Jon and Samwell are in the same place. We actually see Samwell's first chapter from Jon's perspective, which is something George wanted to do. I think just as a writerly thing to do. I don't think it was like, oh, he's just being boring. I think he just, as a writer, he wanted to show a different perspective.
Different perspective and the different experiences, because obviously Jon has had to change a lot with his new position. And
so that first half of the book feels thematically tighter. It feels more like A Feast for Crows. It's got a lot of melancholy. It's got some bleakness, and there's a strong sense of a thematic.
It's got a lot of bleakness.
A lot of bleakness. There's a sense of things falling apart, of decay, which is a topic that's recently come up with us, and that George has recently noted in an interview that Paris has put to him. And decay seems to be something that interests him. as a writer, but he I think he put it down to his life. He was growing up in the projects of Bayonne, New Jersey, seeing things run down, getting the sense that